The smell of gasoline and blood filled the abandoned warehouse on the edge of Brooklyn as Dante Moretti pressed the cold barrel of his Beretta against Vincent Caruso's temple. His hands were steady, they always were when it mattered, but inside, his heart was screaming. 3 days. It had been 3 days since Elena disappeared from their apartment, her coffee still warm on the kitchen counter, her phone left behind like a breadcrumb trail that led nowhere. 3 days of searching, threatening, and breaking every man who might know something. And now, finally, he had found the bastard responsible. Where is she? Dante's voice was ice and razors, the kind of calm that made hardened criminals wet themselves. But Vincent just smiled through his broken teeth, blood trickling from his split lip. You think you're so powerful, Moretti? You think your father's name protects you from everything? Vincent laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. She's probably already dead. And even if she's not, you'll never find her in time. Some things, Dante, even the Mafia can't fix. That's when Dante pulled the trigger. But not at Vincent's head. At his kneecap. The scream that followed could have shattered glass. Wrong answer, Dante said quietly. Let's try again. This is a story about how far a man will go when everything he loves is threatened. About the moment when the heir to a criminal empire learned that power means nothing if you can't protect the one person who makes you human. About how Dante Moretti, the man everyone feared, discovered his greatest strength wasn't violence, it was vulnerability. But to understand how we got here, to this warehouse filled with blood and desperation, we need to go back. Back to where it all began. Back to the coffee shop where a Mafia prince met the only woman who never looked at him with fear. Part 1, the prince and the civilian Dante Moretti had been raised in a world where trust was currency and loyalty was paid for in blood. At 28, he was everything his father Marco Moretti had groomed him to be, calculating, ruthless, and utterly in control. He ran the family's operations in Manhattan with the precision of a surgeon and the mercy of a sledgehammer. Men twice his age deferred to him. Enemies vanished when they crossed him. And everyone, knew that Dante Moretti would one day rule the Moretti Empire with an iron fist. But there was a secret that Dante kept locked away, buried so deep that even his father didn't know it existed. A secret that lived in a small coffee shop in Greenwich Village, where a 25-year-old art teacher named Elena Santos made the best cappuccino in New York and smiled like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. Elena knew nothing about the Moretti name. She knew nothing about organized crime or territorial disputes or the violence that funded Dante's Armani suits. She only knew the man who came into her coffee shop every Tuesday and Thursday morning at exactly 7:15 a.m., ordered the same drink, and sat in the corner booth reading the Times like he had all the time in the world. She knew him as Daniel. Just Daniel. A businessman with kind eyes and a smile he didn't use often enough. Your usual? Elena asked one Thursday morning, her auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun, paint still staining her fingernails from an early morning art session. Please, Dante said, and then, because he couldn't help himself, you were painting this morning. Elena looked down at her hands and laughed, a sound that did something dangerous to Dante's carefully constructed walls. Is it that obvious? Only to people who pay attention. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Dante forgot about the meeting he had in an hour where he'd decide whether to approve a weapons shipment from the Russians. He forgot about his father's expectations and the weight of legacy pressing down on his shoulders. He forgot everything except the way Elena's smile made him feel like a normal person instead of a monster in expensive clothes. What were you painting? He asked. The sunrise from my apartment window. I have this view of the Brooklyn Bridge, and sometimes when the light hits it just right. She trailed off, suddenly self-conscious. Sorry, you probably don't care about, I care, Dante interrupted quietly. Tell me about it. And she did. For 20 minutes, while other customers came and went, Elena told him about light and shadow and the way the city transformed in those early morning hours before it fully woke up. And Dante listened like her words were scripture, memorizing every detail because he knew, had known from the first time he saw her, that this woman was going to ruin him in the best possible way. That was 6 months ago. Now, Dante lived a double life. By day, he was the Moretti heir, attending sit-downs with other families, managing their legitimate businesses, and handling problems that required his particular brand of persuasion. By night, he was Daniel, the man who took Elena to art galleries and held her hand in dark movie theaters and learned what it felt like to be loved for who he was rather than what he represented. He hadn't told her the truth. How could he? How do you look at someone pure and good and say, by the way, I'm a criminal? My family controls half of New York's underground economy, and I've personally put 3 men in the hospital this month alone. So he lived in the lie, telling himself he'd find the right time to tell her. Telling himself he could keep these worlds separate, keep Elena safe in her bubble of ignorance while he handled the darkness that was his birthright. He was wrong. Part 2, the moment everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning when Dante's 2 worlds collided with the force of a nuclear bomb. He had stayed over at Elena's apartment the night before, something he did more and more frequently, despite the risk. Her apartment was his sanctuary, the only place where the weight of being a Moretti didn't follow him through the door. They had stayed up late talking about her upcoming art show, about the possibility of him meeting her family over Christmas, about a future that Dante wanted desperately but knew he couldn't promise. "I love you," Elena had whispered in the darkness, her head on his chest, her hand over his heart. "I love you too," Dante had replied, and meant it with every fiber of his being. He woke up at 6:30 a.m., as he always did, his internal clock conditioned by years of early morning meetings and late-night crises. Elena was still asleep, her hair spread across the pillow, her face peaceful in a way that made Dante's chest ache. He pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, careful not to wake her, and slipped out of bed. He had a meeting at 8 a.m. One of their associates in Queens had been skimming profits, and Dante needed to handle it personally. He left a note on the kitchen counter, had to run to an early meeting. "Coffee's ready, just press start. I'll call you later." He was 3 blocks away when his phone rang. His father. "We have a problem." Marco Moretti's voice was tight with controlled fury. "Vincent Caruso knows about the girl." Dante's blood turned to ice. Vincent Caruso. The underboss of the Caruso family, their biggest rival, a man known for his cruelty and his long memory. A man who had been looking for leverage against the Morettis for years. How? Dante's voice was deadly calm, but his mind was racing, already calculating scenarios and solutions. "Doesn't matter how. What matters is that he sent a message this morning. He wants the waterfront territories we took from them last year. And if we don't hand them over by Friday..." Marco paused. "He's going to make the girl disappear." Dante was already running back to Elena's apartment, his heart hammering against his ribs. "I'm going to her now. Put a team together. I want eyes on every Caruso property in the city. And find Vincent. I don't care what it takes. Dante, now, Papa." He took the stairs to Elena's apartment 3 at a time, his hand already reaching for the gun in his shoulder holster. The door was still locked. "Good." He burst inside, calling her name. "Elena." The apartment was empty. The coffee maker he had set up was running, filling the pot with dark liquid. The note he'd left was still on the counter. But Elena was gone. Her phone sat on the kitchen table. Her purse was on the couch. Her keys hung on the hook by the door. And on the bathroom mirror, written in her lipstick, were 3 words that made Dante's vision go red: "We have her." That's when Dante Moretti, the man who never lost control, put his fist through the wall. Part 3, The Hunter Becomes the Hunted. The next 72 hours were a descent into hell. Dante activated every resource the Moretti family had. He put out word on the streets that he'd pay 6 figures for information leading to Elena's location. He pulled in favors from cops, judges, and politicians his family had in their pocket. He personally visited every Caruso property he could find, tearing through warehouses and gambling dens with a team of his most trusted soldiers. But Vincent Caruso was smart. He'd hidden Elena somewhere off the grid, somewhere that none of Dante's usual sources could reach. By day 2, Dante hadn't slept. His father tried to reason with him, suggested they negotiate with the Carusos, give them what they wanted in exchange for Elena's safe return. No, Dante said flatly. They were in his father's office, surrounded by maps of New York with red marks indicating Caruso territories. The moment we show weakness, every family in the city will come for us. We don't negotiate with kidnappers. Then what do you suggest? Marco asked, his voice heavy with the weight of impossible choices. I find her, Dante said simply. And I kill everyone involved. His father studied him for a long moment. You love her. It wasn't a question, but Dante answered anyway. Yes. Love makes men weak, Dante. It gives your enemies ammunition. Love makes men fight harder, Dante corrected, his voice steel. It gives them something worth burning the world down for. Marco sighed, suddenly looking every one of his 60 years. Your mother used to say something similar. Before, he stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Before she was killed in a rival family's bombing 12 years ago. I'm not going to lose Elena the way you lost Mama, Dante said quietly. I'll find her. And I'll make sure Vincent Caruso regrets the day he learned her name. The breakthrough came on day 3 from an unexpected source. One of Dante's soldiers, a young recruit named Tommy, had a cousin who worked as a janitor at one of the Caruso family's front businesses, a seafood distribution company in Red Hook. The cousin had overheard Vincent talking on the phone about the package being held at the old Russo place. The old Russo place. An abandoned warehouse that had once belonged to the Russo family before the Morettis had absorbed them 15 years ago. It was off the books, forgotten, perfect for keeping someone hidden. Dante assembled his team with surgical precision. 6 men, all loyal, all willing to die for him. They loaded up with enough firepower to start a small war. No cops, Dante ordered. No witnesses. We go in quiet, we extract Elena, and we leave bodies. Understood? His men nodded. They knew what was at stake. They knew Dante wouldn't stop until Elena was safe or everyone responsible was dead. They hit the warehouse at 3 a.m. Part 4. Into the darkness. The warehouse was a maze of shadows and rust, the smell of salt water and decay heavy in the air. Dante moved through it like a ghost, his gun steady, his senses heightened to razor sharpness. Behind him, his men spread out in careful formation, covering every angle. They found the first guard smoking a cigarette by the loading dock. He didn't even have time to reach for his weapon before one of Dante's soldiers put him down with a silenced shot. 2 more guards inside. Neutralized just as quickly. And then, in the back office on the 2nd floor, Dante found Vincent Caruso. He was sitting behind a metal desk, drinking expensive scotch like he didn't have a care in the world. Like he hadn't just signed his own death warrant. Dante Moretti, Vincent said, not even bothering to reach for the gun on his desk. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. Where is she? Dante's voice was death itself. Safe, Vincent said casually. For now. But that depends entirely on you. You have 3 seconds to tell me where Elena is before I start removing body parts. Vincent smiled, that infuriating, confident smile of a man who thought he held all the cards. You think you scare me, Moretti? Your father's been threatening me for 20 years. I'm still here. My father, Dante said quietly, stepping closer, isn't me. Something in his tone made Vincent's smile falter. Last chance, Dante said. Where is she? When Vincent hesitated, Dante grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against the wall. The gun came up, pressed against Vincent's temple. She's in the basement, Vincent gasped. Locked room. She's alive. I swear she's alive. Dante didn't lower the gun. If she's hurt, if she has so much as a scratch, I will kill everyone you've ever loved. Your wife. Your children. Your mother in that nursing home in Staten Island. Everyone. Vincent's eyes widened. He understood then that Dante wasn't making a threat. He was making a promise. Dante motioned to one of his men. Take him. We'll deal with him after. He descended to the basement, his heart hammering so hard he could hear it in his ears. The basement was dark, lit only by a single hanging bulb. At the far end was a locked door. Dante didn't bother with the lock. He kicked the door open, his gun raised. And there she was. Elena was huddled in the corner, her wrists zip-tied, her face bruised, her eyes wide with fear. But when she saw him, when she recognized him despite the darkness, something in her expression shattered. Daniel? Her voice was hoarse, confused. What are you doing here? How did you? Dante holstered his gun and crossed to her in 3 strides, dropping to his knees. He pulled out a knife and cut through the zip ties with shaking hands. Are you hurt? His hands were gentle as he checked her over, looking for injuries. Elena, baby, are you hurt? I don't understand, she whispered, even as she let him pull her into his arms. How did you find me? Who are you? And there it was. The moment Dante had been dreading for 6 months. The moment when he had to choose between the lie that kept her safe and the truth that might destroy everything. My name is Dante Moretti, he said quietly, holding her gaze. And I'm not a businessman. I'm part of a crime family. The Mafia. And the men who took you did it because they wanted to hurt me. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena pulled back, her eyes searching his face like she was seeing him for the first time. You're a criminal. Yes. Everything you told me was a lie. Not everything. Not the important parts. Dante's voice cracked. Not when I said I loved you. That was real, Elena. That's always been real. Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks. You put me in danger. They took me because of you. They hurt me because of you. Each word was a knife to Dante's heart. I know. God, Elena, I know. And I will spend the rest of my life making this right. But right now, I need to get you out of here. Can you walk? She nodded, even as she flinched away from his touch. That flinch hurt worse than any bullet. Dante got her on her feet, wrapped his jacket around her shoulders, and led her toward the stairs. His men had secured the building. Vincent was zip-tied in the office, guarded by 2 soldiers. Outside, 3 black SUVs waited. But as they emerged from the warehouse, Elena stopped. I can't do this, she said quietly. I can't be with someone who lives like this. Who lies like this. Dante felt his world cracking apart. Elena, please, take me home, she interrupted, her voice breaking. Take me home, and then stay away from me. Part 5, The Choice. Dante took Elena back to her apartment, stationed 4 of his men outside for protection, and then did the hardest thing he'd ever done in his life. He walked away. For 2 weeks, he stayed away. He threw himself into work, handled Vincent Caruso with brutal efficiency. The man wouldn't be walking properly for the rest of his life, and tried to accept that he had lost the best thing that had ever happened to him. His father noticed the change. You did the right thing, Marco said one evening over scotch in his office. Love is a weakness in this life. Better she's gone now before she became a bigger liability. Dante said nothing. He just drank. But on the 15th day, his phone rang at 2 a.m. Elena's number. His heart stopped as he answered. Elena? They're here. Her voice was terrified. Dante, they're trying to break down my door. I called 911 but, I'm on my way. Dante was already moving, already calling his men. Barricade yourself in the bathroom. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He made it in 7. When he burst into Elena's apartment building, his men behind him, he found 3 Caruso soldiers trying to kick in her door. They had come for revenge, come to finish what Vincent had started. They didn't leave the building alive. Dante found Elena in her bathroom, exactly where he'd told her to go, curled up in the corner with a kitchen knife in her shaking hands. When she saw him, she dropped the knife and fell into his arms, sobbing. "I'm sorry," she gasped against his chest. I'm sorry, I tried to stay away but I was so scared and I didn't know who else to call." "Shoo," Dante soothed, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Because she was. "You did exactly right. I'm here. I've got you. I don't want to lose you," Elena whispered. "But I don't know how to love someone who lives in your world." Dante pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "Then I'll leave it." Elena blinked. "What?" "I'll leave the family. I'll walk away from all of it, the business, the violence, the legacy. My father will disown me. I'll lose everything I've ever known. But if that's what it takes to keep you safe and keep you in my life, then it's worth it." He cupped her face in his hands. "You're worth it, Elena. You're worth everything. You do that?" Her voice was incredulous. "Give up your whole life?" "My life doesn't mean anything without you in it," Dante said simply. "These past 2 weeks have been hell. I've been walking around like a ghost, going through the motions, but nothing matters. Nothing's worth it if I can't share it with you." Elena was crying again, but these tears were different. "Your father will never let you go. You said it yourself, you can't just leave the Mafia. My father will understand. Or he won't. Either way, I'm done choosing that world over you." Dante pressed his forehead to hers. "I choose you, Elena. Today and every day for the rest of my life. If you'll have me." For a long moment, Elena said nothing. "Then, there's another option." Dante waited. "You don't leave your family. You just change what that means." Elena's voice was stronger now, more certain. "You told me your father wants to transition more operations to legitimate businesses. Help him do that. Be the one who moves the Moretti family away from violence and into something better. Use your power for good instead of abandoning it." Dante stared at her, this incredible woman who had just been through hell because of him and was still thinking about solutions instead of running away. "You'd stay with me?" he asked quietly. "Even knowing what I am?" "I'd stay with you because of what you could be," Elena corrected. "I saw how you looked at me in that warehouse, Dante. That wasn't a monster. That was a man who loves me. A man who would burn the world down to keep me safe. I can work with that man. I can love that man. Even if the world is dangerous." "The world is always dangerous," Elena said. "At least with you, I'll have someone watching my back." Dante kissed her then, soft and desperate and full of promise. "I will protect you with my life. I will never lie to you again. And I will spend every day proving that your faith in me isn't misplaced." "I know," Elena whispered against his lips. "I believe you." Epilogue. 3 years later, the Moretti Foundation's new community center in the Bronx was bright and modern, filled with art supplies, computer labs, and classrooms where kids from low-income families could learn everything from coding to painting. Elena stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony beside Dante, her hand in his, a simple gold band on her ring finger matching the one on his. "Ladies and gentlemen," the mayor was saying, "this center wouldn't exist without the vision and generosity of Dante and Elena Moretti. They've shown us that it's never too late to invest in our communities and build something better." Dante caught his father's eye across the crowd. Marco was standing in the back, looking uncomfortable in his suit but present nonetheless. In 3 years, Dante had kept his promise to Elena. He'd worked tirelessly to shift the family's focus toward legitimate businesses, real estate, construction, community investment. The transition wasn't complete, might never be complete, but they were moving in the right direction. His father had resisted at first. But when he saw how determined Dante was, when he saw that his son was willing to walk away from everything if necessary, Marco had grudgingly agreed to try it Dante's way. "You're making us soft," Marco had grumbled 6 months ago over Sunday dinner. "I'm making us smart," Dante had corrected. "The world's changing, Papa. We change with it or we die out." Now, watching Dante cut the ribbon on this community center with his wife beside him, Marco couldn't deny that maybe, just maybe, his son had been right. After the ceremony, as they drove home through the city, Elena squeezed Dante's hand. "You did good today," she said softly. "We did good," Dante corrected. "None of this happens without you. I just had the idea. You did all the heavy lifting." "No," Dante said, bringing her hand to his lips. "You saved me, Elena. You saw something in me worth saving, and you refused to let me settle for being what everyone expected. You made me want to be better. That's everything." Elena smiled, that sunrise smile that still made Dante's heart skip beats. "So what you're saying is, I'm pretty amazing." "The most amazing," Dante agreed. "Also humble. Very, very humble." She laughed and swatted his arm, and Dante felt that familiar warmth spreading through his chest. This was his life now. Not perfect, there were still dangers, still enemies who remembered the old Dante Moretti and wanted revenge. But he faced those threats with Elena beside him, and that made all the difference. They had found something rare in a world built on violence and betrayal, a love worth fighting for. Worth changing for. Worth building a better future for. And as they drove through the streets of New York, past neighborhoods that were slowly healing thanks to the Moretti Foundation's work, Dante thought about that terrified man who had stormed a warehouse 3 years ago to save the woman he loved. That man had been willing to kill for love. But he had learned something more important, how to live for it. Sometimes the greatest power isn't in the fear you inspire or the control you wield. Sometimes the greatest power is in choosing love over violence, vulnerability over armor, and hope over cynicism. It's in being brave enough to change, even when change means abandoning everything you thought you were supposed to be. Dante had learned that lesson in a dark warehouse, staring into the eyes of a woman who saw him, really saw him, and chose to believe he could be better. He was still learning it every day. And he'd spend the rest of his life proving she was right to believe. Because in the end, that's what love does. It doesn't just save you. It transforms you. It makes you want to be the man your partner believes you can be, even on the days when you don't believe it yourself. Dante Moretti had been raised to rule an empire built on fear. Instead, he chose to build one based on hope. And that, more than any weapon or wealth or reputation, was the real power. The power to choose who you become, regardless of who you were born to be. Some love was worth dying for. But the best love was worth living for. Worth fighting for. Worth burning your entire world down for. Isabella had learned that lesson in a ballroom filled with broken glass and impossible choices. And she had never looked back. Behind them, the sun set on their old lives. Ahead of them, uncertain and beautiful and terrifying and real, stretched the life they had chosen together. And that made all the difference.